The views and opinions of this program are those of the host, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.
For over 95 years, we've set the bar. Power, we restored it. Protection, we reinvented it. Record yields, we redefined it. If there's one thing we know at FS, it's that just because something hasn't been done, doesn't mean it can't be done. We're never satisfied unless we take your farming operation to the next level. Run your equipment at peak efficiency and bust the bins this season. Visit fssystem.com.
Well, watching the market trade as we wrapped up the week on Friday, we saw more strength in the bean complex with a more mixed tone to maybe slightly weaker in corn and wheat. And we saw mixed action to slightly higher in cattle and hogs as well. We're going to run through everything that's going on in the market here as we rounded out the week. Joining us now for market analysis, Kristi Van Ahn-Kjeseth with Van Ahn and Company. Kristi, always good to talk to you, and hopefully sounds like maybe your neck of the woods there in Minnesota getting a little reprieve finally from some of the heat and dryness the last few days.
Yeah, it's been brutal here. I mean, it's been a lot better than other places, but we are just not used to the heat up here. I did see something like it's been a year since we had heat advisory warnings up here, and it was very, very warm week, and the humidity was a killer this week. I mean, It's been a while since we've seen all the windows fogged up. You can see it. I think that maybe you're helping some crops by keeping that dew around, but for the most part, it's been toasty.
Yeah, been toasty, not good for corn, soybeans, spring wheat out in the fields across much of the country. And I think that's been probably the biggest storyline driver this week. I don't know. It's felt like a fairly quiet week overall, but you throw in that hot, dry weather, definitely a concern for soybeans this time of year.
Yeah, it has been. And, honestly, I'm learning a lot as this process goes with like a late stretch of this hot and dry weather. I really did think that it was a bean story overall. You're talking about abandoning pods, but really when you look at it, this is a lot that could nip off some yield when you talk about the corn market. And so I think the market wants to wake up to it. Soybeans definitely, because they just don't have that wiggle room. But every time corn wants to go with it, corn is reminded that the chance of them getting under a 2 billion bushel carryout is really hard to do. And so this could be a gift to the market if we could cut off some yield, not what a producer wants to see, but it's definitely something that is gaining the market's attention. But like you said, it's been quiet. Corn market is still down on the week. Soybeans are up, but they're up against this key level around this 1375 area that they're not really budging off of it. If you can close above that area, you do open up some targets like the 1440 area, but we need to get a close above that and kind of sustain that. We're coming into a weekend, so a lot of the forecasts can change, but as of now, you're just not really seeing any precipitation pop up on the extended forecast, and you're also not really seeing any different structure as far as it goes for the weather, as far as temperatures go.
Yeah, very, very true. Well, to your point about corn, I think it's a great point. Something else I want to throw at you for thoughts here. Seasonality in the corn market. I think like this time of year, late August, early September, we put in that quote unquote harvest low many times in the corn market. So maybe that has something to do with it. A little seasonality here, Kristi.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of hard to put it to bed until you get closer to September. I mean, obviously, 1 week from now, it's going to be September, which is crazy to think of. But yeah, I mean, without seeming, I don't want to seem real bullish when I talk about the corn market, but October is very friendly seasonally for this corn market. You have to look at the dynamic and say, hey, we're a full dollar under crop insurance values. They're going to generate the harvest price here through the month of October. If you are looking at a crop that's average to a below average, and you're coming through October, it's a really smart thing to look at and say, hey, maybe I'm going to try and cover my risk to a degree and buy a call into this corn market. I'm not trying to sound like a broker, but if this price starts to go back up, that's going to affect your payment if you're looking at an average to a below average crop.
And that's a great point. Thinking about as well payments. I mean, crop insurance. We've gotten the board down to some of these levels where it's a bit of a decision. And I know I've heard stories. Last couple of weeks, a lot of folks are saying, "Well, I don't know what I have in the field. Makes it tough for me to market here." And I think this year more. Well, I'll back up and say we never know exactly what we have until it's in the bin. But I think this year more than the past few years, we really don't know what we have until it's in the bin, Kristi.
Yeah, absolutely. I should put a picture, maybe I'll do that later on Twitter, of my daughter in a bean field the other night. Um, it's crazy. This bean field sat in corn stubble for 3 weeks, and I was like, this is not going to make it. Then it looked like actual garbage for a very long amount of time. And now it's a very good looking bean field. So I'll post that later. But it's just interesting. And that's kind of been the dynamic, is that it has been a roller coaster of emotions on what the crop is like out there, especially when it comes to the bean market. If we went back 2 weeks, the amount of calls we were getting from guys saying, hey, I'm going to have 15 more bushels onto this bean crop than I thought I was going to have. They were very cautious because of the late start, how short the beans were for the longest time, the lack of precipitation. And then August was it was such a great start. And you had these guys start to say, hey, no, we need to do some more marketing. We're going to have more bushels than we thought. I'm not going to have room at harvest. And now you're starting to see them backtrack off of that with the heat and dry patterns that we've been seeing, talking about abandoning. And so it has been such a roller coaster to try and get that. It doesn't help when you're thinking maybe the crop's going backwards and the markets are rallying. That makes that fear of missing out even bigger. And so how to kind of maneuver that risk is a really tricky subject, but it's definitely something we've been working with. And like I said, this price that we're at, when you look at where we've been, there hasn't been a whole lot of time that we've been above this last year.
It feels like managing that risk, to your point there's a lot of different tools in the toolbox. It's not always necessarily making a cash sale, or there's a lot of different things you can do to try and alleviate and manage some of that risk, maybe leave the top side open, whatever the case may be. Because just looking at the cash market, Kristi, I mean, basis isn't that great right now in many spots. So if you're doing your marketing and being smart about it, you got to utilize the tools that are there.
Yeah, and I think one thing to look at right now is I'm very fearful that bean basis is not going to stick around at the price level that it's at. Now that it's great for the next couple months. And then I'm actually really friendly basis into this December timeframe, late November into December timeframe for both soybeans and corn. But I do think that you're going to look at this market and you're going to see a producer and you're going to say, I don't have room for all of it. So what am I going to store? And you look at beans, they're a decent price. There's some of the higher prices we've been able to market at. And you look at corn and you're sub $5. And I think the answer's on the wall that people are going to want to store corn. The carries are there. The basis is not great in corn market right now. And I think the opportunity to take the cash in hand is in the bean market right now. And so if you do have to deliver these beans at harvest, this is a conversation that you really need to have with yourself to say, am I willing to put it on DP? And if I'm not willing to put it on DP, then look at these opportunities to cash out some beans.
Kristi, as well, the wheat market, that's always a roller coaster. We have the Black Sea issues, of course. That's one thing. And we are watching, of course, spring wheat here across the U.S. and into Canada. Some concerns there. Overall assessment of this wheat market. Is there anything positive right now to think about in this wheat market, Kristi?
Yeah. I look at wheat every day and I'm like, you are not a friend of mine. Like you just are not. And so it's been tricky for wheat because it's been hit or miss on yield. Some people are saying it's better than they expected, but their expectations were not that great to begin with. So you have that. And now you have pockets of low protein. You have pockets of falling numbers. Why don't we just throw vomitoxin on there as well? And you're getting all these discounts and it's one issue after another. And even though we have some tighter carryouts than expected, we are coming in here and we are seeing horrible basis levels. Like there is no demand for wheat right now. And that is a problem when you look at this market is the price isn't great on the futures board. The basis is extremely wide, that it's just not penciling right now. There are some great carry opportunities if you can store the wheat though. And, potentially you're kicking the can down the road for dealing with problems 3 months from now, 4 months from now. But right now, when you look at the wheat market, that's kind of my best situation right now. Take advantage of the carry, get yourself out there. Hopefully you get past harvest and your basis starts to narrow back up to a degree. But fundamentally, you still see the issues for wheat in Ukraine and Russia. We do have extremely tight carryouts yet in the world, or I should say in the US, and it's questionable as far as it goes for the world. China's holding so much of it, you pull them out. It's a very different dynamic. And so fundamentally it's there. It just seems like no one has an interest in trading the wheat market or helping it rally at this point.
We're having a conversation today with Kristi Van Ahn-Kjeseth with Van Ahn and Company. Kristi, let's move over to the livestock trade. Cattle and hogs, we'll call it a mixed day on Friday. You know, hogs early on were sharply higher, and then I'm guessing we saw some profit taking ahead of the weekend. I don't know. Overall, it was kind of a disappointing day. Cattle and hogs across the board there.
Yeah. So when you looked at the hog markets, I mean, I feel like I looked at it and you were, 250 higher. And then I swear it wasn't that much longer. And I looked at it and they were barely higher on the day. And so I just think that the hog market, yeah, you probably saw that profit taking coming into the weekend. I think the question is are you going to see hog liquidation? Are you going to see the numbers not there? And I think that's the question that the market is trying to build off of, but they're just so unsure at this point. And we really need cash to be a friend with us. When you look at the cattle markets, a little bit of a different situation. You have fundamentally every reason for this market to run, but you have seasonals really saying we should be putting in a high right about now. And it seems like fundamentals and the seasonals are going head to head, and it's just getting these markets absolutely nowhere. We saw that cattle were like up $2 on the week, and we saw hogs mixed depending on which contract. And so it's been a very, very quiet market. It's been a while since I saw, the consolidation that you're seeing into the cattle markets. It is just not getting anywhere.
Well, and to that point as well, maybe some hog liquidation. The heat definitely having an impact, I think, this week on hog operations and feedlot country as well. I think that's maybe on the cash side of cattle. That's probably why we're seeing a bit of slow activity. It's just way too hot. Nobody wants to do anything this week, Kristi.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, you're getting this lack of moisture. You're starting to get some questions about long-term health. And so I think it all boils in together that it just doesn't give enough reason. I think you're also hitting harvest in so many areas that, they're just going to let it ride, and you're just not seeing any movement.
Kristi, how about the outside markets? We've had a lot of talk there with energies, with the stock market, inflation. We had the Jackson Hole symposium going on. Just a lot of talk about interest rates and the cost of money. That's an overall big picture kind of thing that's really weighing on all of our commodities and livestock right now. What's your assessment? How things stand currently as we near the end of the month?
Yeah. So you had this meeting. You had the Fed come out, and really they didn't raise interest rates, but the tone was a little harsh. Like, they came out and they said that they want to stick to this. They're going to continue to fight this. And you had one chairman come out and say that do not expect cuts until the very end of 24 at the first start of it. And so I think when you started to hear that kind of come out of your mouth, and you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, we aren't seeing a raise in interest rates, but it's not long-term friendly either, that you really were a struggle on which direction to go. So initially you did see the down market kind of struggle with that news. And then you built that support throughout the rest of the day saying, hey, okay, maybe short-term this is friendly. We can get on this board and we can kind of see this rally come. Interest rates are such a big deal to the farm economy. And I also think that's why you're going to be looking at this and saying, I think that you're going to see some crops going to town sooner rather than later this year, because no one wants to be paying those interest rates right now on operating loans. And so I think that you'll have that short-term period into the late November, early December saying, hey, I don't want any more income. We know we can defer payments, but sometimes it's just easier not to sell at all. And so I think that's where you're going to have that lack of selling. But come January, I'm kind of worried you're going to open those floodgates and get some cash in hand to deal with those interest rates.
That's a great point. Something to really keep an eye on. Something I don't think we think about all the time, but a great point there for sure. Kristi, other final thoughts before we let you go here today? Anything else you want to mention or reiterate to folks as they are thinking about their marketing plans?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I looked at is, you cannot really compare pro farmer numbers to USDA numbers directly. What I like to relate them to is what do you see in a percentage of growth or decline off last year's yield? And when you look at it, pro farmer found a lot of areas that had better yields than the year prior. And right now, USDA is not necessarily in that big of a growth camp. And so I think, you need to be attentive to this, that USDA might pause here on any sort of yield decline and wait it out for a little bit. The talk of this late heat and dryness affecting corn yield, it's going to be a while before you know what kind of effect that has. And so I do get a little bit nervous that USDA did what they wanted to do in yield, and they're going to take a month or two off before they really adjust it. And no news tends to be bearish news. And so we just need to be attentive to that and what USDA decides to do.
Kristi, great insight. I know if folks want to reach out to you and the team there at Van Ahn and Company to get some advice on their marketing and more, they could do that very easily. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can call us at 1-800-648-5494.
Fantastic. Kristi Van Ahn-Kjeseth with Van Ahn and Company. Thank you as always for joining us. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's going to do it for Market Talk today. Find us online, markettalkag.com. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great weekend.